When we talk about riots in New York City, nearly every single time there are two sides: the people of New York versus some sort of law enforcement. Usually there's some arrests involved, injuries, sometimes worse. However, this tale is a little different. Rather than the police versus the people of New York, this is a case of the police versus the police. How the heck does that happen? Well, let's get into today's story. Let's go back to the 19th century. Fernando Wood is a former New York City mayor. He was a good-looking guy, just shy of 6 feet tall, slender, dark brown hair, blue eyes. To anyone walking the streets, he certainly looked the part of mayor. And Wood always wanted to be in politics. When he opened his first business, which was a wine and cigar shop, it failed because too often he focused more on politics than he did on his own business. He wanted to be a decision maker for the city, though. But he also knew that he needed to start meeting the right kinds of people in order to make that happen. So Wood left New York to manage a tobacco factory in Virginia. That's where he started to make these kinds of connections. But let's just say that these connections were a little shady. It made no difference to Wood. In his mind, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. When Wood returned to New York, he opened a grocery store 1 block from the waterfront. Drunken sailors would step off of their boats by the docks and they'd walk a block away and find alcohol right there on his shelves. Once again, maybe not the best people, but if you look the part of mayor and can scoop up some extra votes along the way, that's all he cared about. With the money he earned from this grocery store, Wood invested in 5 ships, and one of those ships became the first to reach San Francisco after gold was discovered. This obviously helped him to make some extra money, and by the time he was 37, Wood was able to retire from business and focus only on politics, which was exactly what he wanted. Wood was finally elected mayor in 1855, and he'd inherit a police department that wasn't happy with a major change that had come to their organization. You see, for many years, the police department wasn't required to wear a uniform. They had more of a generic code of what to wear, but not a specific outfit. But in 1853, after years of resisting a uniform, the cops were finally put into one. These officers thought these uniforms made them look like servants. The uniform would have been a blue coat with brass buttons, a blue cap, and gray pants. And even though the police department now looked the part, the city citizens complained that their police department was right up there with the worst in the world. Corruption came in the form of extortion, counterfeiting, brutality, election fraud, which may or may not have helped Wood get elected in the first place. And the people of New York were fed up, and their cries were heard all the way up in Albany. During Wood's second term in 1857, the state created its own police department to replace the old department. That means that the state government actually agreed with the people of New York, and the city police department was so bad that they needed to intervene to try to make it right. This new police department was called the Metropolitan Police, although from this point forward, I'm just going to call them the Mets. The Mets would have new police commissioners from the 5 counties around the greater New York area, and they'd be replacing the old police department known as the Municipal Police. At this time, there were 1,100 municipal officers. They're looking at the mayor and wondering, is the state allowed to do this? Can they really just put all of us out of a job like this? They felt some sort of loyalty to Mayor Wood. At least 800 of them did. 300 of those officers ended up flipping to become Mets. However, Mayor Wood thought the creation of this new police force was a load of nonsense. He said it was unconstitutional and refused to disband the municipal police force. And so, for a short while, 2 different police departments coexisted, but they undermined each other. A criminal would get arrested by one police force, and then the other would set them free because the other force isn't allowed to arrest that criminal, or whatever the stupid reason was. None of it made any sense, and the people of New York were starting to get scared because they could see tension rising between these 2 different forces. What if they all just went at it one day and all of the criminals of New York run free through the streets to commit whatever kind of crimes they wanted to without consequence? New Yorkers' worst fear happened on June 16th, 1857. Here's where corruption plays back in. Mayor Fernando Wood needed to fill somebody in for the role of city street commissioner because the previous one had just died. Next in line for the job was supposed to be the deputy, but this was only a verbal promise made by the previous commissioner. Wood wouldn't accept him as the new commissioner unless he paid a $50,000 bribe, which he couldn't do. However, there was a Democrat willing to pay the bribe, and Wood also happened to be a Democrat. So he was more than happy to take Charles Devlin's money. So according to Mayor Fernando Wood, the new street commissioner of New York was Charles Devlin. But then you have the state governor, a Republican named John King, who said to himself, well, if the city doesn't have a street commissioner ready to go, I'll appoint one. And he'd rather the new street commissioner align with his politics. So according to the state, the new street commissioner was Republican Daniel Conover. There are now two different people who think that they're the street commissioner. Conover, the Republican, had the governor's commission in his pocket when he approached City Hall in New York City. However, the municipal police were standing at the building to protect their mayor, even though this police department, according to the state, technically didn't exist. Conover tried to get through the crowd of officers, and the municipal police just shoved him right back. And then he'd try to re-enter, and they would just push back harder and harder each time, even forcing him down the stairs. So Conover developed a new strategy. He went looking for a Republican judge to attempt having the mayor arrested for assault and inciting to riot. Was he able to find one? Of course he was. His plan was working. Now all they had to do was get into City Hall and arrest the mayor. The captain of the Mets was a man named George Walling. Walling happened to be one of the 300 men that swapped sides when the Mets were first formed. I'm not going to say that he was hated by the municipal police, but we can say that there were definitely plenty of people who knew who he was, who probably disliked him. Captain Walling gets to City Hall, and he begins to ascend the steps to the front doors. Now, just so you can picture what's happening, Mayor Wood has stationed 300 municipal officers right outside of City Hall, and then he has another handful inside the building itself, meaning that when Walling walked into City Hall, he would have passed by hundreds of officers in uniform. Nevertheless, Walling was permitted to enter the mayor's office, and when he gets in there, he tells Wood, "I'm here to arrest you." And Wood kind of laughs it off and says, "You can't be serious." And then Walling then attempts to go around Wood's desk and handcuff him. And now, try to picture this. You ever watch an action movie or play a video game where a bunch of bad guys just burst into a room all at once, and it's so well synchronized you're thinking to yourself, there's no way that would ever happen in real life? Well, that's exactly what happened. 20 officers barged into the room, grabbed the captain, and dragged him out of the office. They threw him down the steps of City Hall in the process. Defeated, the captain's wondering, how is the city supposed to deal with this clearly corrupt mayor? But then, moments later, some 50 additional Mets showed up with a second warrant for the mayor's arrest. The Mets were heavily outnumbered by the mayor's municipal police. They were also armed with nothing more than batons, tree branches, stones, and slingshots. So right there in front of City Hall in the largest city in the United States, these two clashing police departments resorted to combat. Some battle cry is let out. The two sides would charge at one another. But once again, the Mets heavily outnumbered. Then you have mobs of New Yorkers who, rather than run away from this carnage, gathered to watch as if they were watching a theatrical performance. People climbed trees in City Hall Park to get a better view, and then many of these police officers, they're taking clubs to their skulls. Punches were thrown. Teeth are knocked out. Rocks and stones hurled between people's eyes. And meanwhile, these 50-something Met officers continued to push forward. They had a mission: arrest the mayor. Some of them even managed to get to the front doors of City Hall at the top of the steps. Little did they know that even more officers were waiting for them inside. They'd kick them right back down the stairs. Nearly every Met was injured in this brawl. 12 of them badly, far beyond a black eye and a few missing teeth. One of these officers even remained a cripple for the rest of his life. 53 injuries total. Now, this felt like a game to the mayor, who celebrated with his municipal officers after their victory. And when Captain Walling returned with the city recorder and sheriff, Wood allowed them into his office again, and he taunted them, saying, "You can never arrest me." However, their timing could not have been better, because outside of City Hall, you could hear the loud beating of drums getting closer and closer. As it turns out, June 17th happened to be the anniversary of the Battle of Bunker Hill, a Revolutionary War battle which proved the American patriots that they could hold their own against the British Army. The National Guard's 7th Regiment happened to be marching to the water in order to board a ship to take them to Boston to celebrate the anniversary of that battle. You can only imagine what the sight looked like for the 7th Regiment approaching City Hall. These butchered Met officers are crawling to the soldiers, begging them for help. When Major General Charles Sanford read the arrest warrants for the mayor, he halted his men and redirected them to City Hall Park. This was not Major General Sanford's first New York City riot. As some viewers may remember hearing his name from a prior video of mine, he played a role in the Astor Place riot in 1849. When the 7th Regiment stood in front of City Hall, he ordered them to aim their muskets as he approached the front steps. These municipal officers could not compete with the weapons brandished by the military. Sanford was able to march right into the mayor's office, and when he did, he basically told Mayor Wood, "You're done." Wood submitted and was taken into custody. However, he would not stay for long. In fact, he never even stood trial. You see, civil courts determined that the only reason these events even happened in the first place was because the governor tried to interfere with mayoral duties. The governor had no right to try to appoint a street commissioner. So even though the mayor was protected by his own police department that had supposedly disbanded, and they brutally attacked the legal police department in the eyes of the state, no major consequences came to anybody. In fact, Fernando Wood was re-elected as mayor of New York in 1860. Injured police officers sued Wood, but the city ended up paying them instead. Not only that, but that summer continued on with 2 different police departments. It wasn't until a gang riot broke out that summer that Mayor Wood agreed to quietly disband the municipal police force. A rare victory for the New York Mets. Oh, come on, it's just dangling there. Anyway, that's going to do it, folks. Let me know what you think. Be sure to let me know what kind of stories you'd like to hear about. Plenty more riots to come. Don't worry about that. Make sure you also like the video and remember to subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't already. Become a part of the NYC Storytelling Gang. And until next time, deuces, kids.